Welcome back, Midnight viewers, to Father Malone's Weekly Roundup. I'm your host, Father Malone, and beside me here... Boy, you've gotten big. This is Ripley Jean. Got nothing to say? Alright, bye. It's been a little while since the last Roundup, and depending on the platform you're listening to or viewing this, it might be a new sensation. Anyway, how have y'all been? Thriving, I hope. You better all thrive. Now, let's get some business out of the way. If you're listening day of, it is not too late to get tickets to the Lovecraft and Libation show going on this weekend here in Las Vegas. I've got my ticket. I'll see you there. This coming Monday, we've got a new Hammer House of Horror. That's Guardians of the Abyss. Only 3 episodes left to that particular series. And then Mike and I will be pulling up stakes and heading down to Norwich, where they made 112 episodes of Roald Dahl's Tales of the Unexpected. Oh, I want to thank you all for making Star Trek Fest such a massive success. Just one film to go, and then that series is joining Admiral James T. Kirk into the Nexus. Let's not forget that a version of him still exists there. I put out an away mission last week. That's the one where HP and I looked at the dueling Shatner and Nimoy performances in the detective series Columbo. And if you want more away missions, we'll be following Trek forever on the Patreon channel. Link is in the show notes. And after that, dear listener, it's Von Doomfest. Okay, where do we go this week? Not much in theaters. I refuse to see another movie with Ryan Gosling. I'm sure Project Hail Mary is a fun time, and I love those filmmakers, but I need a moratorium after The Fall Guy. We got another Supergirl trailer. I genuinely think it looks great, but now with the Warner Brothers sale, I'm feeling about Kara Zor-El the way I felt about Black Adam in the months leading up to its release. As good as it could possibly be, isn't it just a dead end? Aren't they just going to replace James Gunn with some right-wing drone? Speaking of which, did you hear about Andy Weir talking shit about Star Trek because he had a pitch for a movie and they didn't buy it, so I guess everything that followed was garbage? He thought fans just want to watch Starfleet blowing up Romulans. That same fear I have for the future of DC films, I have quintupled when it comes to Star Trek. I have a very dim view of what Trek is going to be henceforth. Luckily, we have 60 years of proper thinking Trek to draw from. Anyone watch the trailer for the new Faces of Death? Okay, hang on. Faces of Death was the one film everyone whispered about when I was a kid. This is the early 80s youngsters, and that film may as well have been the actual videotape from Ringu, given its reputation. When I finally got my hands on a copy, which involved a videotape box switch at my local video store and an inattentive clerk, I had half a dozen friends who refused to watch it for fear it would warp their minds. In the end, there was very little that's real in the film, other than random bits of documentary footage that happened to catch something gruesome. The fact of the matter is that any random internet site will allow far more real and far more horrifying stuff into your home right now. So, what do you do with an IP predicated on snuff in an internet age? Fictionalize it, and make it how indistinguishable real and fake have become thanks to the proliferation of video sites like TikTok. This is the second film in a year to conquer the modern problem of internet content censor. Lily Reinhardt had a flick last year called American Sweatshop. This isn't that. This is a proper horror movie, and God bless. I think that's all the trailer shit I have to speak about. Well, they did put out a new He-Man trailer. I don't think I have anything to add since the teaser, except more Evil Lyn, goddammit. And what the fuck is going on with Skeletor? Do they realize that we've had decades of snarky, bitchy memes with this guy? It's kind of hard to put the menace back into the toothpaste tube, but they're trying. And I'm sure it's going to be terrible, although I'm still buying a ticket. Let's talk The Pitt. I realize the season isn't officially over. There is one more episode by the time this airs, so I can't speak with any finality on this here. When you think about it, can you ever really speak on the finality of a series until it's complete? Any new season's writing staff might undo everything you've come to expect, but this isn't that kind of show, so onward we go, or backward we go, because to talk about The Pitt, you have to talk about ER, or really, you have to talk about EW. That's Emergency Ward, and back in 1974, that was the title of the burgeoning novelist and filmmaker Michael Crichton's screenplay, covering 24 hours in the life of an emergency room staff. Crichton was an interesting fella. He attended Harvard University in the English track with a focus on writing. When he was a freshman, as an experiment, he submitted a paper by George Orwell under his own name and received a B-. and he decided if Orwell could only rise to that level, he figured writing wasn't for him, and instead entered the medical school for the rest of the 1960s. He was publishing the whole time, I should note, under the pseudonym John Lang. His own experiences with life in the ER are what led him to write EW. Ew. He wrote it as a follow-up to Westworld, which he had just written and directed, but no studio wanted it, finding it too chaotic and technical. In other words, everything that made the show so revolutionary. There would be interest over the years, but it wouldn't be until Spielberg made Jurassic Park and Crichton slipped him his old script, which had been updated over the years for various potential suitors, that the project would develop momentum. First as a movie that Spielberg intended to direct, and then finally where it belonged all along, as an episodic television series. That series, all 15 seasons of it, while it chronicled the lives of dozens of attending and pediatric and oncology and surgery docs, was really the story of John Carter of Mars. The pilot is his first day in the ER. He's really the audience's proxy. And over the next 15 years, he'd be delightful and naive and strong and an asshole, and he'd run the entire gamut, eventually distancing himself to start his own clinic, but finally being drawn back into where it all began, in the ER. That was in 2009. Let's jump to 2022. John Wells, the man who actually ran ER for all those years and spent the interim shepherding another Chicago set drama, Shameless, through its lengthy life on Showtime, he and Noah Wiley and R. Scott Gemmell, another ER producer, approached Sherry Crichton, widow of Michael, about rebooting ER and continuing the further adventures of Dr. John Carter. When negotiations fell apart, Warner Brothers claims Sherry asked for millions more than any creator's estate would ever receive, while Crichton, still bristling over the lack of credit Michael Crichton had received on Warner's Westworld reboot, was unwilling to sign off on a Warner's proposal that Crichton would have no credit on future ER spin-offs, which is like asking Dick Wolf not to have his name on any new Law and Orders. Wells, Wiley and Company shifted their sights to a script that is entirely new, even if it is written by one of the very producers pitching it as a new ER reboot, even though it's a medical drama set in an ER, and it stars Noah Wiley. And here's John Wells in his own words from the pitch he made to Sherry Crichton. Quote, Michael's original screenplay was a day in the life of the ER. 30 years later, it is to be a 14-hour shift for John Carter, now the attending physician. We would see Carter arrive for the beginning of his shift, follow him through the 14 hours of his day, considering whether he can keep doing this work, and watching him regain his purpose and recommit to his profession. Unquote. Now, the first season of The Pitt features Noah Wiley as an ER attending physician, Michael Robbie Rabinovich, and follows him for a 15, not 14-hour shift, where he considers whether he can keep doing this and then regains his purpose and recommits to his profession. Now, I happen to feel that The Pitt is a superior work to ER. I think it is far more immediate and impactful. My mom was an ER nurse. Her mom was an ER nurse. And during the height of that show's popularity, I remember asking her if she liked it, and she did. However, she said it's all fiction. There's no time for romance in the ER, no time for deep relationship building with your patients. It's boom, 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 and it's never ending. Mom loves The Pitt. And there is so much to love, from the documentary camera work that manages to feel more cinematic and less the shaky cam aesthetic that reared its head in the 90s and completely dominated the aughts. Its writing is top-notch. These guys are where they are in the industry because they are fucking giants when it comes to episodic TV storytelling. And personally, as I get older, I'm always heartened to see new talent emerge. John Carter was a first-year attending, meaning he'd been through medical school. The interns here are kids, man. They're still students and they look like they're still in high school. It's very jarring. But then, like I said, it does my heart good to see that every generation has put out some fucking quality talent. I love the young cast here. In particular, Shaban Aziz as a 20-year-old wonderkind whose parents are both bigwig doctors themselves in the same hospital. Other things to love, Pittsburgh, baby. What a fucking underrated city Pittsburgh is. I love it there, though I could never live there. Snow plus hills plus me behind the wheel equals damage to every car in my immediate vicinity. Although maybe I would risk it if I didn't have this gluten bullshit and could actually enjoy a sandwich at Primanti Brothers. Oh man, it's like eating a cloud. I love how every time a show is region-specific, one actor will take it upon themselves to do the accent. That's Kathleen Lanasa here. She won an Emmy for her portrayal of charge nurse Dana Evans, and she did it with all the yins you can take. Oh, since we're talking about cast, Fiona Dourif. I only knew her first as Brad Dourif's daughter, and if you don't know him, you're a terrible horror and fantasy fan. Chucky, the Halloween reboots, Grima Wormtongue. After that, I only ever saw her in those legacy Chucky movies, and I felt like she never jibed with the genre. And I was right. Holy fuck, she is the actual revelation on the show. Put her in the real world, and it is just gold. The second season has been equally strong to the first, with relationships deepening and splintering, and the general wear of life in the emergency medicine game in the 21st century wreaking havoc on everyone involved. It's an important show. An honest portrayal of the heroic efforts of the medical industry is a good thing, especially after the past 2 decades of lionizing psychopaths and narcissists, like on Breaking Bad. Oh, speaking of acting dynasties, not only the Dourifs are on display, but Taylor Dearden as neurodivergent second-year resident Mel King, who is awesome, by the way, absolutely fascinating to watch, even when she's doing nothing at all, is the daughter of Walter White himself, Bryan Cranston. Anyway, I can't say enough good things about The Pitt, except for the continued unsettled feeling about that lawsuit. It's argued that Sherry Crichton is already benefiting from ER, and what she's attempting here is extortion. That the very creative film community is under threat, because, it's argued, what the creators of The Pitt are indulging in are time-worn TV tropes. ER wasn't even the first ER. There was a sitcom set around an emergency room in the mid-'80s, literally called ER. And certainly no show set in a hospital owes anything to Michael Crichton. And if they capitulate, then the door is open for any show with a passing resemblance to another to be litigated into oblivion. And I agree with all of that. Except they brought basically this show to her and said, this is the ER reboot. And she said, pay me. And they said, oh, ours is entirely original now. I'm sure there's going to be a settlement, and I'm sure it won't affect the quality of the show. It's just a drag. A shadow cast on the entire affair that's impossible to ignore. Hit it, HP.
Come and listen to a dog that's hip. Here we go, it's Ribs Picks, yeah!
Thank you, HP. You know the number 8 sign that you're a lame superhero? Your only superpower doing a Charles Nelson Riley impression. Rib's pick this week is Daredevil Born Again Season 2, which is a fucking mouthful. And Matt Murdock is back, surveying the scene, well, echolocating the scene, and dealing with Mayor Wilson Fisk and his army of personal goons, the Anti-Vigilante Task Force. You realize that Disney is the only outlet standing up to the current administration, right? The mouse. Disney. Oh, Disney, the corporate nightmare. They're a company for lame adults who can't get over their childhood. Andor took on the corporate and political intrigue that can lead to both fascism and revolution, and now 2 seasons of Daredevil kicking the shit out of ICE and its cadre of masked goons, quite literally. On the one hand, it makes me beam with pride that this company and these characters, these beloved characters, are standing up for what we'd always believed in. And on the other hand, I suddenly understand the needs of the audience in the 1930s to escape. Is it any wonder that musicals became so fucking popular during the Depression? Not at all. Trust me, I believe everything is political and everything has a right for discussion and dissemination. I just don't know if I'm getting quite the thrill I should from watching our heroes triumph against forces that we seem to be losing against in the real world. It's a queasiness that never quite goes away, and I realize there's nothing they could have done about the timing with the Epstein war that just started, but here we are. And where is that exactly? Obviously Hell's Kitchen, specifically, and New York in general, but where in the plot have we found ourselves? Matt was unable to save Foggy from Bullseye. He was, however, able to save Kingpin from Bullseye, a fact that should be driving his Catholic brain into the red zone. So Kingpin is the mayor. I know I've expressed this before, but I always thought the biggest reach in Superman comics wasn't that there was a bizarre world with superpowered pets. No, it was Lex Luthor getting elected president. How could this multiply convicted felon, who had shown over and over his contempt for humanity, become president? I no longer hold such criticism. Season 1 ended with Fisk declaring martial law, Murdock on the run, and Punisher kicking the shit out of a bunch of ICE agents who, like a lot of the militarist goons in the real world, have taken to using his symbol as their own. Season 2 debuted last week, and so far we've gotten 3 episodes of the 8-episode season. The big plot here involves a half-sunk freighter in the middle of the East River that was loaded with military-style weapons that were to be unloaded and supplied to Fisk's growing army. Meanwhile, Daredevil and Karen Page, because they haven't killed her off needlessly yet, are out to expose the connection, all the while dodging Fisk's goons, and Bullseye is still gunning for our favorite blind man, although Bullseye has turned into one of those enemy of my enemy is my friend type scenarios, with him not wanting anyone else but him to take Daredevil out, so if they get close to doing that, he swoops in, and like a guardian angel, he just fucking wastes everybody. Fisk's army of ICE agents have targeted vigilantes and have been pulling them off the streets and disappearing them to a black box facility in New Jersey. Speaking of Jersey, Michael Gandolfini, who was excellent on the HBO series The Deuce, plays a political flunky who's been made Fisk's protege and is involved with deceased reporter Ben Urich's niece. Matt's girlfriend, played by Margarita Leviva, hey, it's a Deuce reunion, The Deuce reunion. She's gone over to the Fisk side and is now using her psychiatric skills to frame up anyone Kingpin has deemed an enemy, including the Swordsman, who we were introduced in the Hawkeye series. He's Kate Bishop, current Hawkeye's uncle. I like that series quite a bit, actually. And I especially like that he's played by Tony Dalton, who was so fucking scary in the final seasons of Better Call Saul. The Swordsman is such an odd character to throw in here. Anyone remember when he was one of the emissaries of evil? Or the Lethal Legion? They skipped this part in the MCU version of The Swordsman, but while Trickshot was teaching young Clint Barton how to shoot arrows, Jack Duquesne taught him bladed weapons. Daredevil has always been the best of the MCU's television presence, which is staggering when you consider the fucking limitless possibilities for characters and settings to choose from, and the one that rings truest, the one that we respond to greatest, is just a guy trying to keep scumbags from fucking up his city. It becomes a little easier to believe when you consider how fucking perfectly cast this series has been, top to bottom. The top being D'Onofrio's Wilson Fisk. Have you seen D'Onofrio in the past few years? The man is ripped. He's got to be wearing a big old fat suit for the role. And of course, Charlie Cox as Matt Murdock. For further reading, check out the previously crowed about Prohibition television series Boardwalk Empire, where Cox portrayed an Irish Republican gunrunner. That way you can continue to watch him not do his own accent. And fucking thank God they brought back Deborah Ann Woll as Karen Page, who has been from the beginning the actual lifeblood of the series. She's got that oddball combination of deeply wounded and fiercely indomitable. Just awesome. Foggy is dead, so you don't get any mention, Eldon Henson. But it's the fighting, right? We're here for the fisticuffs, the Donnybrooks, the one-take hallway battles. Oneers in the digital age are meaningless. I know I've covered this somewhat when I talked about Brian De Palma, but the length of a take used to be bound by the magazine on the camera. Now you can legitimately film an entire movie beginning to end without any interruption. You can also, thanks to the fact that it's ultimately pixels, manipulate any join between multiples and convince anyone that it was one long take. The bloom is off that rose. That's usually not a problem when it comes to an action scene. It can mean total immediacy and appreciation of the athleticism and choreography of all involved. Or it can be like that fucking brawl in Guardians 3 set to the Beastie Boys. Just an endless parade of look-at-me moments that don't have any stakes at all. Born Again Season 2 hasn't nearly approached that level of idiocy, but it's kinda getting close. And like I said at the top, ultimately, street-level battles with cartoon versions of the paramilitary forces that are currently loose on our streets don't feel like a victory, even watching them get sniped by Bullseye. Okay, maybe watching them get sniped by Bullseye, but that's just because Bullseye's such a fucking awesome character. Anyway, it's all very awkward feeling. Not helping is how very little time we spend with our leads. We've got 3 of 8 episodes already on screen, and most of that time has been spent with Karen McDuffie, Murdoch's new law partner. And there's an entire subplot with Ben Urich's niece and her cringy underground internet news posts. Even worse than those posts, and this is true of every MCU property, the man on the street interviews. Stop doing them. You can always see an actor bursting behind the eyes that they've got a speaking role while they're trying to offhandedly tell us what a good job Mayor Fisk is doing. And since I'm aiming at tropes, all texts and DMs on screen are exposition. That's an exposition dump, you lazy bastards. The novelty has worn off. In any event, I don't care if any of the peripherals are canon or not. These characters are boring. I simply do not care about Fisk's flunky's relationship with an internet reporter. Color me crazy, but I would rather spend that time watching Matt Murdock confess, or detect something, or meditate. I'd rather watch him fold his cash than spend any more time with these people who aren't Daredevil. Not like I won't keep watching. There's promise of a Jessica Jones reunion in the coming weeks, and the show is already filming its third season, so I guess we're going to be in the Daredevil business for a while. Don't let my queasiness throw you off. It is excellent television. Now, if we can only get these folks onto the big screen with their pal Spider-Man. Stay tuned, true believers. And I think that's going to do it for the Roundup this week. Thank you all for listening or watching. Like I said, it's a Hammer House of Horrors this coming Monday, and then Star Trek Beyond the week after that. But you can hear both of them right now, and you'd be doing us a tremendous service if you would head over to the Patreon channel, patreon.com/Father Malone. Or if money is tight, and I know it is, you can do me a favor and just share this show or like it or subscribe. For Ripley Jean, I'm Father Malone. Try to enjoy the daylight.